Yeah, I would like to know about the limit of religion and science, the between religion and science, the limit of two kinds, because had a lot of fight in the human history, and I would like to know about this.
A very good question. First, let me stress what I said in the lecture, that the roots, the roots of the tree of science are very much formed by biblical theism, biblical faith, the conviction that the world is created good and that we are to develop it and that it is not God, that it's real, that we're created in God's image so we can understand God's thoughts, we can follow his thoughts after him, that we have authority to name the animals. Those sorts of roots within biblical faith are the roots out of which the scientific revolution came. So all over the world, wherever the church and mission goes, I think almost always it takes science with it. My mother believed in Tanzania that scientific enterprise of good medicine for these children was working hand in hand with God's grand plan for us to develop the earth. See, they believe that these little bugs, these little demons, would get into the child and kill the child. That there was spirits and witches and so forth doing this. And then we got a little microscope with a glass on it. And so when a baby would come who was sick, they would take a little pin, prick the finger, and put the blood on the glass. And then with the microscope, they would look through the glass. And they would see this little parasite wiggling around in there. And they would say to the mother, this is what is making your child sick. That's first-rate science. And so we'll give you this pill. You take the pills for 5 days, come back, and you will see that all those little parasites have died. So the parents would come back 2 days later, 3 days later, and they'd see they have died, you see. So they were introducing science into that culture. The church is very comfortable with that. And my mother always prayed. She didn't just give science, but she prayed for the healing of these children. So this was biblical theism nurturing a scientific revolution in that culture and doing it in harmony with a commitment to God. Now the struggle comes where you say, like I said in my lecture, science will become our ultimate authority, not God. That's scientism. That's not science. That's science as an ideology. It will have the ultimate authority, not God. That's scientism. And a classic example is Karl Marx, which we talked about. Dialectical materialism, that's scientism. And you couldn't critique it. You could not critique anything that the communist regime did because it's science, and science is truth, the ultimate authority. It supersedes God in its authority. You see, there, yes, the church struggles and confronts that kind of approach. For that kind of approach is extremely destructive. If you don't believe it, look at what happened. Just look at what happened. And you will see what happens when science becomes our God instead of God. Or my anthropology teacher at a university in America. She was a huge woman. And there was 300 students in the class. I'm studying anthropology for my PhD degree. And she's standing up on this platform. I'll never forget the day that she walked back and forth on that platform. This great big woman. You students are only monkeys. You're only animals. Science has proved. What? Science has proved that you are only monkeys. She's shouting, proclaiming scientific truth, that I'm just a monkey. I open up the Bible to Revelation chapter 1, the first chapter of the Bible, and I see that I am more than a monkey. Yes, we were created on the same day that the mammals were created. We are mammals. We are biological creatures, but we're more than that. We're created in God's very own image, you see. So there, I was in conflict with my teacher. She was saying she's teaching science, but it was a pseudoscience, most certainly. Science has not proved that we're only monkeys. It hasn't proved that at all, though she was proclaiming it. And so when science goes down that kind of a track, like happened with Nazism and so forth, then the church must confront and say, this is taking us astray. This is becoming an ideology that is destructive. And so we need to confront science when it goes in that direction. Or, for example, when science goes and pollutes, as has happened in the United States, it has polluted some of our rivers with radioactive waste. Science did that. Science investigated and found out how to make these nuclear systems and so forth, and did not take proper care of it. And so those rivers are polluted with this radioactive waste. It'll last for years and years and years. That's very wrong. And as church, we should confront that kind of misuse of science. Say this is wrong. We disagree with it. But science, to investigate how it's put together, it's good. We want to encourage that, don't we? I have grandchildren, and they do projects in school on science. I'm always very proud of them, encouraging them, yes, be a scientist. Investigate how it's put together. That's good. Good question. And you can see I responded with some passion. I feel very deeply about this.
So you visited many Islamic countries, Muslim
Yes,
countries.
I do.
And so have you ever faced Muslim aggression directed to you?
Never. 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 I'm always welcomed. I'm always given the best food in the land. I am welcomed and treated very, very honorably. Some years ago, my son, one of our sons, traveled in Algeria for 3 weeks. When he came to the border after being there for 3 weeks, they almost did not let him through the border to leave, because he had spent no money. For those 3 weeks, everywhere he went, the Muslims welcomed him, gave him food, gave him lodging, provided free transportation for him. This Christian chap from the West, they welcomed him most energetically. That's how I experienced Muslims. In fact, I'm writing a book about it right now, which will be organized around the theme of hospitality, mutual hospitality. Now, the question behind your question is Islamic militancy. I think that's the question behind the question. Let me just say a word about that. And maybe to say a word about it, I should make a comment. I did earlier today talk briefly about political Islam. And sometimes those questions can lead us to the sort of question you're raising. When Muhammad was in Medina, remember, he was at war with the Meccans. For 8 years, there was some 30 battles, I think it was, between the Muslims of Medina and Mecca. The Muslims finally won the wars. But that situation developed a philosophy that said that the Muslim area, the Muslim-ruled area, is the Dar al-Islam. And the region that is at war with the Muslims is outside the Dar al-Islam. And that region is called the Dar al-Harb, the region of war against the Muslims. And that was the situation there in Medina. The Muslims and the polytheists at war with each other. So the polytheists were called the region of war, Dar al-Harb, and the Muslim-ruled area. It doesn't mean that everybody was Muslim in that area, no. There's many Christians, many Jews, and so forth living there as well. But they were ruled by the Muslims. That area under Muslim rule is called the Dar al-Islam. They also developed another theory, and that is that there is a region also which is at peace with Muslims, although it is not ruled by Muslims. And that is called the Dar al-Ahad. the region of the covenant. And so in the Medina experience, Muslims began to view the world as three regions. The region under Muslim political control, the region that is at war with the Muslims, and the region that is not Muslim, but it is at peace with the Muslims. Here is where Muslim authorities all over the world keep trying to address this kind of a view, saying, look, we must think of a pluralistic world in which Muslims and Christians and other people live together pluralistically in a peaceful way. And this sort of political view of the world, we need to address it and discourage it and lead and go in other directions. And I take that very seriously. Part of the reason I'm involved in dialogues with Muslims is to attempt to address this sort of worldview. And Muslims support me in that, and because most Muslims also are in that kind of conversation, calling on Muslims everywhere to live at peace with their neighbors and with other cultures and so forth. There's this very, very interesting surah in the Quran which says that God has determined that there will be many religions and cultures so that Muslims learn to be a people of peace in a pluralistic world. And there's a friend of mine has been, for some time, I don't think he's doing it now anymore, but for some time, he was going into Afghanistan and into Pakistan. He's a Christian chap, to meet with the Taliban leaders who are involved in this jihadist kind of stuff. And when he comes to meet them, they say, "Oh, who are you?" "Well, I'm a person of the book," he says, and holds up his Bible, shows them that he's a person of the book. "Oh," they say, "then we must respect you. The Quran says you should respect people of the book. What do you want to talk about?" Well, he says, "Are you teaching peacemaking in your madrasas?" "Well, no, they're teaching people to be involved in jihads." Then he says, "Well, I noticed in the Quran that God has determined many religions and cultures, so you'll be a people of peace. Would you consider teaching that in your madrasas?" They hadn't thought of that. And so he dialogued with them and talked to them about that, this Christian chap. And actually, the madrasa curriculum has been changing in Afghanistan and Pakistan, as they have heard this Christian plea for a more peaceful approach to this challenge of a Dar al-Harb, Dar al-Islam kind of view of the world. Good question. Very good question.
Have you benefited from our teaching ministry? Have you found TVS videos helpful and relevant? Please consider supporting us with your prayers and financial gifts. For more information, visit tvsseminary.com.